I'm not going back to college to be your friend. I'm going so I can get Uber One for students. It saves you on Uber and Uber Eats. I'm there for $0 delivery fee on cheeseburgers, up to 10% off smoothies, and 6% Uber cash back on rides. Just to be clear, I'm there for savings, not whatever you think college is for.
Get Uber One for students, a membership to save on Uber and Uber Eats. With deals this good, everyone wants to be a student. Join for just $4.99 a month. Savings may vary. Eligibility and member terms apply.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Tudors Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Larson, and today I am broadcasting from the beautiful Cadhay House in Devon, and I am here with its owner, Rupert Thistlethwayte.
Very well done.
Thank you. Well, Rupert, oh my gosh, I just have to tell you, this has become my new favorite place on earth.
I'm very glad to hear it.
Do you hear that often?
On a sunny day, yes.
Even when it was raining, I thought it was beautiful. There is something so calming about this place. I have never felt such peace anywhere.
Well, it's very nice for you to say so. And actually, we work quite hard to make sure that is the case. By being quite selective who we allow to stay here. No rowdy types.
That's why you're not allowed to stay here. Let's talk about the house, okay? Because that is the feature here, right? I mean, the gardens are gorgeous, but the house is what makes this place. And I know a little bit of the history, but I think I would like you to tell the listeners about, I mean, if we look around, we see this beautiful stone. We know this is a Tudor manor. Do you want to explain how this was built?
Yes, I mean, most of it is Tudor. Actually, probably all of it. But I think it incorporated bits of an earlier house. Particularly, there's a dining room just behind you.
Yes.
And that, I think, was a medieval hall house. And they just incorporated that into the new house. Actually, you know, as you know, the house was built in 1550 when there was quite a lot happening in this country, and there was quite a lot of building materials available. And all these building materials largely came from Dunkeswell Abbey, which is about 5 miles away. And Henry VIII had sort of done his best to get rid of that. So there was a lot of stone and timber available to make a nice new house. So the bulk of it is 1550. The bit behind me, which looks older, is actually the newer bit, because that's a long gallery, and they didn't become fashionable until the Elizabethan times. And so that's probably more like 1600 by the time that fashion got down to Devon.
And that long gallery is fantastic. It's like a museum up there now, but you can imagine people walking back and forth.
Yes, I don't think it's really quite clear why they became so fashionable. I mean, people say it's so that they didn't get a tan in the gardens or whatever. But I like the idea that houses like this were sort of full of staff, and you never knew who was listening to your conversation. So if you were in a nice long room and you stood in the middle of it, you could be pretty sure you weren't being heard.
Right. Unlike this courtyard that we're in right now, pretty much anybody could, if they open a window, they can hear everything that we're saying.
That's why I'm being so careful what I say.
Somebody's listening. It is your house. Let's talk about your family, because your family line is very interesting. You related to the Paulets?
My mother was a Paulet.
Yes.
And this house, the sort of new house, 1550 house, was built by a chap called Hayden, but he didn't have a son, so it went to a nephew, and the nephew married a Paulet, who was the niece of William Paulet, who was on the Privy Council for all four of these Tudor monarchs. And she, I think, felt the whole house needed a bit of an upgrade, and so she did a lot of work on it and put her coat of arms on fireplaces and put these statues up, and built the long gallery. I think that's almost certainly hers.
Yeah.
And then it stayed in the Paulet family for a couple of 100 years, and then, as so often happens, they ran out of money and it got sold, And it went through various families, and then my great-grandparents were looking for somewhere to live in Devon, and this house was available for rent. So they thought that was a bit big, but we're going to have a look just out of curiosity. And when they got here, they found their coat of arms on a lot of the fireplaces. And so they had no idea of the connection at all. So they thought it was, obviously had to happen. And that was in the 1920s. And then in the 1930s, the opportunity came to buy it. And my great-grandmother had just come into quite a nice little inheritance of some estates in Tasmania, which she inherited from her great-grandmother, who was sent out to Australia as a convict.
Wow.
And she did very well for herself when she got there. And she and her son sort of bought a lot of land in Tasmania, and eventually that came to my great-grandmother just in time for her to be able to buy this house back.
That's a great story.
But it's different to the normal story you hear in England about people being rather ashamed of their slave ancestry. This is the other way around.
Yeah. And this part of the country has so much history as well.
It does in the Tudor time.
It does.
Because they were sort of, I think there were a lot of supporters down here of the Tudors who probably weren't terribly keen on the Stuarts.
Right.
Which is why it's rather extraordinary to have these Tudor statues.
Yes. There's a whole story, I think, that needs to come out about this.
Well, I'm not the best person to tell it.
Well, this is a story that we will talk about. Maybe today is not the day.
I think probably not the best.
When we talk about treason and conspiracy and rebellions, this house, I think, heard a lot of things that would have been considered treason, maybe even in this courtyard where we're sitting today.
Very possibly. And as luck would have it, you've got the people here who can tell you about it.
Yes. And one of the things I've discovered is that Walter Raleigh had a home near here.
Yes, he was near Budley. Yes, and actually there are... He's reputed to have come back from America with a lot of swamp cypress trees, and 12, 2 of which went to Kew, and the other 10 were planted in this part of the world. One I know was only about half a mile away.
Yes, I've seen it.
But where the others are, I'm not sure.
But you have one nearby.
It's died.
No.
I know, but they don't last forever.
Now, there is a tree nearby that Nigel showed me that he said was planted by Raleigh.
Oh, well, maybe there's another one he's found.
Maybe it was a different type of tree.
No, it would be.
Okay.
Probably. Swamp cypress.
But yeah, you had Raleigh over here. What other families lived in this area?
Oh, you're not asking the right person. Lots, but I'm not sure that any would.
Yeah, well, you have Somersets, right?
Well, we got Drake.
Yeah.
Drake is not very far
from
here. Literally about 20 miles away, I think.
Wow. It's just this area of England, I feel like, has not been talked about as much as it should.
Well, it's never quite got onto the tourist trail.
Yeah.
Which is a pity because it's got a lot to offer.
It's so beautiful. I spent the first part of my trip around London and then spent a little bit of time in the Kent area. And, no offense to either of those places, but this part of the country is extraordinary.
But it's quite unspoiled. How long it'll go on being unspoiled, I don't know.
Yeah.
People need to come now while it's still unspoiled.
Yes. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm here. The end of this week and next week is to help raise awareness of the Devon area and all the history that is here and the beauty that is here. I don't want to leave.
Well, don't.
I was joking earlier as I was walking by the stables and stuff over there, saying I would really like to just move in. So I'm just going to bring my suitcase and I'm just going to move in. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. You heard it. You just heard him say that was okay.
Comes at a cost.
Oh, so it's not free. Okay. All right. What is your favorite place on this estate?
Well, although you've dismissed the gardens, I think probably the gardens.
Oh, I would never dismiss them, ever. My favorite place is sitting by the ponds.
Well, the ponds predate this house, certainly in this form. They're medieval.
Okay.
And they've got a very special feel about them.
They do.
And they give the, backbone to the gardens. And I think make it very special.
It is. How many people does it take to help you run this estate?
On a Friday, about 15.
Okay.
Because, suddenly we've got to turn everything around. Because if you've had people in all week, then you've got 5 hours to turn the house around before the public get to come and have a look. And then fairly soon after that, the next lot of people come. So, but during the rest of the time, it's more like 4 full-time.
Okay. And for those who maybe want to come visit here, what can they? You have the tea room. What else can they expect to find while they're here? Well,
if they're in the area, they can come and visit the house and have a guided tour, and we will give them a cup of tea and a scone and stuff. But if they've can spend more time down here, they can rent the house. It sleeps 22, so bring their friends.
Right, and you do weddings here too, right?
We do weddings. We can do weddings on site because we got a license to do them in the garden, and you can have the reception here. It's a bit like getting married from home, really. It's that sort of deal. It's not a conveyor belt type wedding.
Sure.
You make it very much your own.
I cannot tell you enough how wonderful I think this place is.
Well, you're very kind. Are you married?
I'm not. It's so peaceful. I feel like this trip for me was partly to, it seems so cliche to say it, but partly helping me find myself again. And I have to tell you, sitting by the pond over there on that little stone bench, I just had some fantastic moments there this weekend already. Something so calming and so peaceful that I just felt at home. And I can't thank you enough.
I think that's partly the history of the place. And partly just being very careful what happens here. It's as I say, it's certainly in my lifetime, it's not going to be a conveyor belt type deal. We try and keep it very special, and anybody who comes here, I think, feels that.
Yeah.
They certainly should.
I definitely did. I definitely did. Well, if you're planning a trip to Devon, I highly recommend you check out Cadhay House here, because it will change your life. That's the only way that I can describe it. It has been transformative for me. You have a website, right?
We have a website. It's cadhay.org.uk. And what I should have said to you at one point is that it's enabled me to combine my 2 passions, one of which is making furniture.
Yes.
And the other is this house. So quite a lot of my furniture is dotted around the house.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have seen your furniture and it is magnificent. You do great work.
I'm not trying to sell my furniture because I don't think I could meet any of the deadlines anymore. But
that's the tricky part, isn't it?
But I hope anybody who comes to stay here will enjoy it.
Yeah. This house has some hidden rooms too. That's what I would call them. Rooms I didn't expect behind doors. Especially, I think, the one that was behind us. Maybe was it right up here with the sliding door where you kind of go up a couple steps?
Yes, well, that's, I referred to the dining room and possibly the remains of an old hall house.
Yeah.
And I think it would have gone right up to the roof space. But in the 18th century, it got divided and a full ceiling put in.
Okay.
Leaving a slightly odd room upstairs, and they had to mutilate the roof a bit in order to make it usable. It would have been a hammer beam roof, quite ornate. But yes, I should have also mentioned that we have quite a few cottages here if anybody wants to come and stay.
That's where I'm moving in.
If I can get rid of you for the week.
I don't think it's going to happen. I'm just going to squat. I'm going to be a squatter in one of your cottages. Rupert, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today and to tell all my lovely listeners all about Cadhay House.
Rebecca, you are very kind.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Tudors Dynasty podcast. If you love the show and would like to show your support, please head on over to my Patreon page. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Tudors Dynasty for more information. Over there, you're going to find commercial-free episodes. You'll get early access, and there's some exclusive content as well, with more stuff to come as I'm rebuilding it. Also, recently I returned from England and cannot wait to go back. But this time I would love to bring you with me. So if you're interested to go on a tour of England with me, why don't you send me an email, Rebecca@tudorsdynasty.com for more information. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.
The Tudors Dynasty Podcast.